But has it, we're going to sort of work off the question that I posed to Matt Groh, where I asked him, like, it looks like the personnel department doesn't think it was the personnel last year because they largely run everything back. And so what exactly has changed since last year? Of course, one thing that has changed is Billy O'Brien's here at offensive coordinator. Billy O'Brien in, Matt Patricia and Joe Judge out, which I think everyone is thankful for, especially Mac Jones. So Billy O'Brien met with the media. He was sort of the star of the show, and of course, he said basically nothing. New year, we just got started yesterday. Clean slate for everybody. Didn't mention Mac Jones by name, which, my guys at Felger and Maz have made a big deal out of, and, we'll get to that in a second. But there's a couple things I wanted to point out about, my reaction to what Billy O'Brien had to say. He was very tight-lipped about offensive changes, which I was disappointed in. Both myself and Tom Curran first, and then I followed up. We're asking sort of about differences, what we're going to see. What are we going to see? Is it going to be that much different than what we saw last time he was here? I asked him a question about, like, you've had a lot of different experiences since living here. He was a head coach. He coached Deshaun Watson, who's different than any other Patriots quarterback probably ever. And then he was in the college game, and which is, very different, and coached Bryce Young. And, is it going to look different than what we saw last time? And he didn't answer the question. And, I'm not expecting a breakdown. I'm not expecting any secrets, but, if he would have said, yeah, the bones are still the same, which I think is true. I think the bones of the system is the same, and there might be a little bit more window dressing to it, which I don't think is a huge deal. But if he said that, or like, look, I've learned a lot of tricks in my time away, and I think you're going to notice that pretty early on. Can't wait to get excited with the guys. I mean, that doesn't tell anybody anything. So I'm surprised that they didn't do that, that he didn't do that. I didn't love his question about that. I thought he could have been a little bit more informative. I know he can be more informative than that, and he was not. I will say, the lack of addressing Mac Jones by name, I don't think is a huge deal. I think it is noteworthy. I do think that you put everything together, from the way Bill has talked about Mac Jones, the quote-unquote trade reports, Bill O'Brien, and I don't think you can rule out something wacky from Belichick, even though I think Kraft would be like, you can resign. We have Gerard Mayo here ready to go, and Billy O'Brien. We're just fine, Bill. Like, you're not trading Mac Jones. He's the quarterback. If you want to quit, you can quit. I don't think it'll come to that, but I think that would be the reaction. If this were any other team, any other city, the way they have talked about Mac Jones, it's absolutely true that you would say something's up. Something, they're either trading him, cutting him, trading up to draft a quarterback, like all that stuff. Again, if this was any other place, it's not any other place. And that's sort of like my second point on this is you can't compare. And I heard, my guys talking about this the other day. Tony Maz and Felger, were saying, when Doug Peterson got hired or met the media for the first time, did he, of course he said a lot of glowing things about Trevor Lawrence. When Todd Monken was hired by the Ravens as offensive coordinator, even though Lamar Jackson was a free agent, he talked about Lamar Jackson because they know the chances are he's going to be there. And what Monken does from a college background, it helps take their passing game to a new level. So, and here's the difference between those other places, and you could talk about any place. At those other places, it's about the quarterbacks. It's about the players. I mean, when you hire a new coach like Doug Peterson after Urban Meyer, the whole thing with a number one overall pick, the whole job interview was about what are you doing with that quarterback? Because he's not going anywhere for 5 years or at least 3 years. So, and he was the number 1 overall pick. So he's not going anywhere. And he was the consensus number 1 overall pick. So it's, how are you going to fix this guy? And that's the most important thing to that team. When Todd Monken interviews with Harbaugh, about their offense, it's how do you fix our passing game? And how do you get more out of Lamar Jackson in the passing game? How do we get more creative and productive in the passing game? So that's what his whole job interview is about. I mean, when Bill O'Brien, but here's the difference. When Bill O'Brien gets hired by the quarterbacks, when Bill O'Brien gets hired by the Patriots, first of all, I don't even think there was an interview. He was the only offensive coordinator interviewed. I don't care about Sean Jefferson or Adrian Clem or any of these guys. They're not real choices, especially after what happened last year. It was just Billy O'Brien. And Bill knows him, and he knows of his coaching, and he knows this and that, and people who are close with him, like Josh McDaniels. And so there was probably no interview. And they certainly didn't talk about, so what are you going to do about Mac? Bill knows what Billy's going to do. When you come and interview for the Patriots, maybe when Tom was here, but again, they didn't interview anybody. They just graduated people up. It's not about the players here. It's not about the quarterback. It's about servicing Bill Belichick. Every other place you're servicing the quarterback or a special player, a franchise type player. First of all, the Patriots don't have one outside of Matthew Judon. And second of all, it's about servicing Bill Belichick. All those guys know it. They're coming here to work with Bill. The players are immaterial. And so when Bill O'Brien gets in front of the media, he's not going to talk about Mac Jones like Doug Peterson did about Trevor Lawrence, because the jobs are materially different. One is serving a franchise quarterback, and that's how he got the job on his plan for the franchise quarterback. Here, you're servicing the 71-year-old head coach because he needs to hear that stuff. And so when Bill O'Brien talks to the media the first time, it's not about Mac Jones. It's about Bill Belichick. He was asked a question about him. Glowing talk about Bill Belichick. That's what it's about in this stage of the Patriots regime under Bill Belichick. It's about servicing him and being loyal to him and saying the right things and not getting on his bad side. So it has nothing to do with Mac Jones. A couple other things that you need to understand about Billy O'Brien. That dude is smart as hell. He is. He may be a goofy package, bald head. He said he was 20 pounds overweight. He's made fun of his chin before. He's a really funny guy. He's got the teapot thing going on. But he went to Brown. Okay. And that wasn't an accident. And he was a captain there, and he's a really smart player. And, just think, Billy O'Brien was at Penn State after Sandusky, never made headlines with anything that he said. He was in Houston before the Deshaun Watson suspension, but in Houston, he was on Hard Knocks. He dealt with hirings and firings, extensions, trade of DeAndre Hopkins, like all this stuff. The longtime personnel guy was sort of pushed out. Rick Smith, I think his name was. Then it was Brian Gain, and all of a sudden he wasn't there in his job anymore. And do you ever remember a soundbite from Bill O'Brien? Was he ever ridiculed on Pro Football Talk or whatever? No, because he's too damn smart. He knows exactly what to say, and all these guys are taking they're not getting talking points from Bears and Bill Belichick, but they know what Bill's saying. They know what Bill said at the league meetings. They know what Bill said after the season. And the smart guys, they just parrot Bill. Bill doesn't need to say anything. They know. Just, all right, Bill's talking about it this way. That's what I'm going to do. And so it's not, I don't think there's any grand conspiracy or anything like that. That's just the way the Patriots operate.
CLNS Media's Patriots coverage is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.